There's no public, so we won't have a comment. Next item is approval of the agenda. Is there any change to the agenda? None, I make the motion to accept the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It is made and moved to accept the agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving to our next item of business, approval of the April 4th, 2022 minutes. Does anyone have any adjustments? They're not as good as a recording secretary minutes, but they're the best I could do. All right. Hearing no adjustments or comments, I will make the motion to accept the minutes of April 4th, 2022 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving to the only item of business, we have survived a very long process that started back in September. Our goal tonight is to do one last check to ensure we have covered the items appropriately and turn over the document for the deeper dive by the Planning Commission and the undertaking of the necessary public hearings. So Sarah, it is all yours.
Sure. So you received a completed draft that's formatted how the final version would be formatted. We put in there your comment, any changes that you had the last time around or any comments that you had that I needed to address. There are some of them that you probably went through and go, I thought we talked about that, but I didn't make that change. So there may be some of those items that we'll need to talk about, or I had marked as Planning Commission talk about, or something like that. So we have a couple of outstanding issues, but my goal is to have this group go through and look at this draft and say, yes, we're ready to go to the Planning Commission, understanding that there are some typos in here. And Laura went through, you found quite a few of them in your review. So, but some of it, I don't know what happened when we moved it from Word. This is an InDesign. Some of the words changed. So I'm like, okay, I got to go back to my crew and be like, yeah, there's a couple of things that just, when I was looking through Laura's comments, I'm like, why does it say that? So most of it is either there's like a space or a S or, not whole words are changed, I guess, but it's some of that, the grammar that you might see that we'll have to read through and work through again and make sure that's good. So tonight, I don't really want to talk about stuff like that. If you've got some formatting issues, feel free to let me know afterwards, but I'd really like to kind of look at content. And if there were any questions about why'd we do this, how'd we do this, or how come, that's what I'd like to talk about. So I guess we'll just start at the beginning real quick and I'll just go, chapter 1. Anybody have any comments or questions that we should talk about?
I'm good with 1.
I'm good with 1.
Article 2.
I'm good.
I have just an item 2.21, refuse receptacles.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to put something in there for the Planning Commission to address the garbage cans left out on primarily 31 and M88?
Yeah, so let me make a comment here. Okay. Anybody else have any comments in Article 2?
I missed what yours was, Bob.
On 2.21,
Oh, okay.
we don't address the garbage cans that sit on the road for a week.
Yeah.
And so I want the Planning Commission to think about that.
I had, sorry.
Then on 2.12, permitted yard encroachments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out, are we switching to the foundation for the measurement for the setbacks versus like the eaves and things?
Yes.
So that's the change.
That is
Okay.
the change. So this would, currently we measure to the eave for all of our structures. This would allow the eave to overhang into the setback 2 feet. Anything over that would have to meet the setback. So if you put a 4-foot eave, you can only allow 2 feet of it to extend into it.
All right. That's all I have on 2.
Laura had a couple of them in here. The one in 2.9 is just a typo. There was something about removing a principal structure. So this is demolition of buildings. So it was item number C. It talked about removal of a principal structure. And then it said, the end of the sentence says, or has received a special land use permit for a accessory structure without a principal building. That end of that sentence should be removed because we do not allow at any time a accessory structure without a principal in the township.
Okay.
And one of the other comments was related to personal wind, which is, or sorry, solar, 2.17, A3. And I don't know, Laura, if you wanna, do you have those comments pulled up? It talks about, we removed the restriction on the panels on the roofs being facing the public right of way. If you remember, we said that initially I had drafted it where you could not have the solar panels on the road right of way. They couldn't be visible. And this committee just said we're different, if you can see them from the road or not. So we took that restriction out. But your comment says didn't have noted if we decided to keep the front yard restrictions here or if it was overlooked.
Yeah, 2.17B3, I think. Yes. Placement in street-facing side yards or a corner lot shall be.
Oh, so for the ground mounted, we are saying that they have to be on the side or the rear?
Yeah.
And so you're wondering if, I don't recall talking about that. Not that we didn't. If a ground mounted system could be allowed in your front yard, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm missing page 21.
Wow.
Is that next
I can
paragraph?
see.
Well, the numbers don't line up with the index, so that'll be fixed.
Yeah, that needs to be fixed because every time we change one page, you got to go back and reprogram the front end. So.
Is anybody else hearing this?
Yeah,
As
I
long
think
as
it's-
Lee's not hearing it.
It's feedback, I think, from,
As long as you're good.
I'm not following what you're
You're
saying.
hearing everything okay? No
Yeah.
feedback interference? Good then. Okay. I was just concerned about you. Okay, cool.
This is so strange. How am I missing 21? 'Cause I
So
thought-
does anybody have a preference on ground mounted solar, if it's in the front yard or not? As drafted, it says a ground mounted system cannot be in your front yard.
I'm not sure you want them in the front yard.
I'm good with that.
But I would say that would identify that as a planning commission decision.
Yeah, I think they'll be talking about solar because that's all new, so they'll be having discussions about it anyways.
Fun.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was opposed to it being visible from the road in terms of on the roof but I assumed that we did this and then if we don't like it, we can go to the planning commission and
Yeah,
during the public hearing and say, well,
right,
I don't think it should be visible.
yeah.
Okay.
There's gonna be a lot of cases where if somebody puts it on the side, it'll be visible from the road. So it's gonna be debatable about whether that applies or not, and it could only be on the back. But I guess that's what the ZBA is for.
Well, let the planning commission decide
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we can raise points. My feeling is we shouldn't be trying to decide it. We should just identify it that we need them to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on 2?
No.
No,
Okay.
Article 3, these are your use districts.
So maybe I'm missing those pages too, but I didn't get the table of regulated uses.
The table of regulated uses is in each district has the use tables.
Okay.
So it's not one big table, it's all just that district only talks about theirs.
Okay. I have to say that I liked that one big table where you could just run through and,
Mm-hmm.
grid search what you were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I thought it was going to be here, and I think it's a good feature
Mm-hmm.
to start your reference and looking. I guess that's what I understood it to be.
Mhm.
I don't know how anybody else feels
No,
about it.
I think that's fine. And I think what we can do is just add it incrementally.
Yeah.
As an appendix or something.
What I would propose is having it as separate kind of policy document, like not policy, but just have it put together in the office and say, here's it consolidated. I don't want to have both in the ordinance because then when you change one, you always forget to change the other one. But I think we can put together that and then it would be like a handout or it would be like a cheat sheet online or something like
Yeah, or
that.
just a place to start where you can say,
Yeah.
well, I'm an R1, is this allowed?
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, it's a special use permit. So then you go here and say, okay, what does it say about special use
Yeah.
permits?
Yeah, so we can do it both ways, and it's kind of, everybody has a personal preference. Some ordinances, I put them all on one table, others, we do it in the district, so. I like them together sometimes, especially when you're trying to figure out which goes where. That's why I did it that way, because you can go, well, we allow it here, this is a similar district, why don't we allow that use here to compare that way?
Mhm.
But I can also understand if you go, I want to have a kennel, and you want to read kennels and see exactly which districts they're all allowed in one easy shot. That works good too, but we'll create that in office.
For me, I thought 3.1, should we put in there, airport, airpark? 3.1, the zoning districts, just as a question mark for the planning commission, not for us to decide.
Yeah, we could.
I think that we ought to put it in there so it doesn't get lost and let them figure out how they want to address that. And I'll be honest, I didn't go through it. I passed through the charts and stuff because I figured let the planning commission spend their time. We took a pass on it and did our best, and I just wasn't going to try to revisit that.
Mm.
That was my opinion.
So Laura, you have a couple of questions in here.
Yeah, I think on 3.1C, the zoning map, that one that you gave to us, I mean, does it have to be, does it have to match as far as it's labeled up top?
Yep, it will say official once we adopt it.
Cool.
In accessory dwelling units, I did not make any changes in the master table because you had mentioned that in a couple of districts that we had talked about adding them in.
Yeah, I think there were a bunch of things on the chart pieces where I had made notes and it wasn't there, so I wasn't sure if like it was a note I made. I definitely noted which ones were during the meeting.
Right,
In one meeting, but I'm not positive it was for every meeting that I noted the same, so.
right. Yeah, and some of them,
Did you,
Yeah.
Laura, did you?
I'll
have-
go back and take a
did
look
you
at
have-
these.
Did you take, with the big charts, did you make, as we went through and added or removed or changed things, did you note it on yours?
Yeah, when the big grid one?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Did you want to?
I don't know if we have to, I don't know. I made note in here, maybe.
See if I can find it. Oh, here we go. So which one was that?
Oh, there were a bunch that, let's see.
So accessory dwelling units, was one of them that came up in a couple districts. I had it just that we had it by right in the R2 district and the village residential, but did we add it to the other districts?
I showed that we decided it was accessory dwelling units was by right in Timberland, agriculture, R1, R2, VR, and VB.
Oh, so maybe my chart didn't get saved. Let me make a copy. Can I make a copy of your chart just to verify against my chart?
Yeah, the notes in the blue pen are from the meeting. The pencil marks are my thoughts before the meeting, I think.
Yeah.
So, so anyways, in
Right.
blue pen, I have those all by right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a copy of that and then I can verify it against yours. So if you guys both agree, I'll like, okay, yes, that happened. So. And so I think that's most of your comments, Laura, throughout.
Yeah.
Article 4, the overlay districts, any comments in there?
I do. In Article 4.22, applicability, A, ordinary high water mark. There is no such thing as an ordinary high water mark for inland lakes in Michigan. So we just need to scratch and Torch Lake from that. I know there was some discussion in the past, and I know that the Planning Commission went through a series of issues with ordinary high water mark, and I think that's when it was put in, but Eagle says there is no such thing. The Army Corps of Engineers says there is no such thing. There was talk about, when they were going through this with the Planning Commission earlier, that Elk Rapids Township and Milton Township had it in there, but both Lambargi and Dorrance Amos say, yeah, it's in there because of the bay, but it doesn't refer to Torch Lake. So you have to have an ordinary high water mark in our ordinance, but it's only applicable to the bay.
The only thing I would say to that is that it would be whatever we define ordinary high water mark to mean. So in the current ordinance, it says the ordinary high water mark, maybe it doesn't use the word ordinary high water mark, but it's the water's edge.
Well, I think you can use the water's edge then for Torch Lake, but ordinary high water mark is a technical term used by the Army Corps of Engineers to identify the water levels in the watermarks in the Great Lakes. The only lake in northwest Michigan that has an ordinary high water mark is Lake Charlevoix, because it's connected to Lake Michigan.
Interior Lake? That's not true.
Pardon?
In the state, that's not true. In the state of Michigan? No.
No, I said in this area.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if I said that. No,
In-
in this area.
Yeah, okay.
So-
Well, what if, I mean, I can create a new B or C and say Torch Lake is the water's edge instead of the ordinary high water mark, if you're more comfortable with that.
I had highlighted in 4.2.6, we use ordinary high water mark there as well, and noting that we needed to define it somehow,
Right.
which goes to what you're saying. It's not,
Right.
that really doesn't define.
Right. I just think it's important because this is something that could become very controversial at some point in time. And I just think if there's if decisions are made based on a alleged ordinary high water mark in the Torch Lake, then I think that would cause problems.
I'll just call that out as being 50 feet from the water's edge on Torch Lake. I can do that. Any other comments?
I've got a few. 4.2.3, talking on point C. During winter storage, we have a number of people that put their hoists up, their lifts up on shore or clearly in the front setback. So I'm wondering if we need to identify that winter storage of those items are exceptions or not. So that's a planning commission decision. That's not ours, but
Docks too.
the docks, yeah. So the docks and hoists in lifts are, a lot of them are stored onshore within the setback during the winter season. And so you might define that as between like October or November. Most docks are up by the 1st of November.
Yeah.
So November through mid-April or something.
I mean, do you think it's worth a planning commission discussion, or do you think, I mean, in practicality, I mean, people do it, so do we just say except
Whack it.
around the winter?
That's
Is
fine.
it, do people leave them out there during the summer? Are we,
No, they put them in the water in the summer, but it's just
Could
saying
we-
here that you can't do
right?
it.
Could we remove it altogether and not have to say anything about the season, or would you
That's
be?
that's why I kind
Well-
of was
What
going to
about
leave
if
it up to
somebody
the,
didn't
Yeah.
take it off the shore in the summertime?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Like if somebody didn't come up, so they just left their stuff on
Yeah.
the shore, you wouldn't want that.
Well, why don't I add in, we can allow in the winter, and then we'll talk about it at the planning commission and decide if we remove it completely, or if we just leave the seasonality of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, the item in 4.2.5 where we talk about, watercraft. I think we do, what? Requiring.
Are you talking
Yeah. I have to
about
find it.
B2?
Is it B? Well, we talk about watercraft, and I was just saying, yeah, here we are, 2, yeah.
Yeah,
B2, with watercraft, we don't have a definition of that.
Okay.
And
Right.
so.
it's
so-
still confusing. What do they mean by for personal watercraft? Is that equal to,
Well, that gets back to a personal watercraft being half a boat for consideration for the number of boats they could have in the water.
okay, well,
there's
that's
no-
not, that's
it's
not
not-
clear here, and the numbers
know,
don't
I
make
agree.
sense that way. So
I agree.
it needs to be,
I'll
whatever
define it.
that means needs to be said more clearly.
Yep.
Or at least defined.
I can work on a definition for that.
Because I believe then, as a for instance, if somebody has their kayaks and stand-up boards attached to the dock on the side, like on a rack, that would not be considered watercraft.
Mhm.
That's fine. Mooring, which is the body of 2, is there a time period? Again, not for us to decide, but should we identify that they need to think in terms of, what length of time is mooring acceptable or not acceptable? Then 4.2.6A, we have maximum extent possible. Who's going to decide that? Is that a zoning administrator decision? Again, that's kind of a definition, and it's not for us, but it hangs out there, and I'm not sure how we're going to define that.
Okay.
Then our favorite subject under 4.2.6E, definition of a seawall. We don't have that. And we use it in a couple places, E and an F. So we're going to have to let the planning commission struggle with what that is, given what the ZBA said would be required.
Mhm.
And let's see. That's all I had in 4.
I want to go back to 4.26, the first paragraph, just to remind you, it has the ordinary high water mark language that needs to be identified as the Grand Traverse Bay.
Any others?
In 4.3, in the special land uses, in the right-hand column toward the bottom, it has short-term rentals. Are we having, are that, I'm trying to go back to our discussion earlier because of the legislation that's in the Senate right now, which doesn't look like it's going to pass this year, but it's going to come up again the next session. Does the village business overlay, do we allow short-term rentals in there?
We currently allow short-term rentals in the village district.
Okay.
I think that this will be an item that the planning commission talks about when they talk about the zoning ordinance, honestly. Because we had an application for one and it came up and the planning commission was really interested in talking about them, so.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else, anything for Article 4? Okay, Article 5?
Well, I don't think it's for us to worry about, for the planning commission to worry about, but this 5.23A, the planting materials and on all that is just so cumbersome. I mean, I'll just be curious as to who's gonna monitor that. Are you, Sarah? That's gonna be up to you?
The zoning administrator would need to watch, to verify that the site plans have the right landscaping and then that they continue to have the right landscaping. And this is all new, because in our current ordinance, there's very limited
Right,
about landscaping. So
right.
I think, yeah, the planning commission's gonna definitely have a discussion about if they agree or disagree.
Under 5.2.2 C, is 3 and 7, are they saying the same thing?
I thought so.
5.2.2, you said?
Yeah.
And then what number are we on?
5.2.2.
C,
C, 3 and 7 seem redundant to me. And Laura.
Yeah.
But I think that whole section goes to Lee's point. I guess all we're looking at is new construction.
Yes.
So,
Or redevelopment of a site.
because that's one of the reasons I looked at 5.2.2B. And I just wondered why we would have an exception for that. But that, again, leave it in for the planning commission to decide.
Okay. Yeah, I think there'll be some good talk about the landscaping at the planning commission level.
And but I've got a couple more. 5.2.3E, invasive species management. Who's going to do that?
Which one is that?
5.2.3E.
B?
E,
E.
as an elephant.
Okay.
It's invasive species, and I mean, I don't know anybody that's an expert in the township, that, township governance, that would be able to look at that stuff. So how would we enforce that?
Yeah, we would look to the conservation district or the watershed. I don't know which one gets involved in the invasive species.
So is that something in which we need the planning commission to say, hey, we have to engage that as part of the requirements of the zoning administration?
Yeah, so this would be for when we're doing the site plan review. So when somebody's identifying on their plan what they're removing or what's being left when they're developing the site, they're required to remove that invasive species. So we would probably say work with the conservation district or.
Somebody's got to sign off. That
Yeah,
knows.
yeah.
Okay. Sign off.
Oh, I'm jumped up to 5.5.2 5.11, the
Okay.
temporary signs. Unless I missed something, there's nothing in here about political campaign signs.
Yeah, we cannot distinguish between a real estate sign, a political sign, an open house sign. They're all just small temporary signs.
I think we did talk about that earlier, I just.
Yeah. And that is a little bit of a change, and just to make it content neutral based on what the Supreme Court told us we have to do.
In that section also, 5.5.2, general requirements, A3, what is meant by temporary signs in this section?
A3. Oh, that's an incomplete sentence, isn't it? I'll have to double check on that.
And can we jump back to 5.3.3, G2, under curb cuts? It says, at the end of that, can meet the spacing as described in 3.A, and I don't think we have I'm not quite sure.
Yeah,
I think that may be a typo or something, but it's,
Yeah, I'll look into that one too.
I had 2 called out, but it was because I thought we were whacking it. But then thought maybe 3 covers it.
Let me look and
What are you
see.
saying?
Oh, I had noted for G2 that I thought we were whacking it, but maybe the ZA piece makes it okay. Confused by 3A, where is it referring to? And then, or maybe it could be what should be whacked and 3 covers what we're going for, or do we whack 2 and 3 and just let it all hang on 4?
So you would want to eliminate G2.
We had talked about allowing 2 driveways for residential. And I'm wondering if maybe 2 can be whacked and 4 covers that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I see what happened. I added that language based on some conversation that we had, and then 3A is somehow, when we were working through it, number 4 was A.
Okay.
So that was 3A, and then that table
Okay.
is the reference.
Gotcha.
So, but I'll look at that because 3, I'm wondering if I added 2 and just didn't delete all of 3 because I deleted part of 3 when we were talking. So let me take a look at that.
So when you look at and make any changes, that's just something to identify with the planning commission.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, anything else in Article 5?
Yeah, I want to go back to the small signs.
Yep.
If we have state regulations regarding political signs,
Mm.
why can't we make a reference to at least that, and because what I'm concerned about, when they go up and when they have to come, there's a specific period of time they can be erected and they can be taken down.
No,
You saying no?
no, we can't regulate when they put them up or take them down.
I'm not
Is it-
saying us, I'm saying, doesn't the state have
Mhm.
guidelines for that?
No, because they're saying if you say you leave a political sign up after the election, that may be your freedom of speech because you don't like the results of the election. So they're saying that you can't take down their, I mean, I think you've seen some of that since the 2020 election, some signs or posters up. So, but yeah, they've said that that's freedom of speech. Like if you don't like the results, you leave a sign up or are advertising for someone else. And yeah, we can't regulate when you put them up or take them down.
On your own property, ones that are on the road,
Right.
along the roadways and stuff,
Exactly.
there are state requirements for when they
Yes.
can be up and when they have to be taken down.
Yeah, and if they're in the road right away, it would be hopefully the road commission's doing some enforcement on that, or maybe you have to call them to say, hey, it's in the road right away, and they'll pull them out, because they do need to be on private property. The ordinance has that they're supposed to be on private property. I don't know, unless it's a traffic hazard, I don't know that the township specifically is going through and enforcing that component of it. But they should, we would just, we're saying they must be on private property.
Kind of along with that, on 542D, can we specifically say that it's just the United States of America flag that you're allowed to light up?
We can say that. I know that's very specific.
Do we want to say that? I mean, a lot of people have Michigan flag or, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sport fans.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be up to, I think the township, if you're comfortable with having lighting on any flag be exempt from the requirements,
Gotcha.
you do see that. This exemption, I think, exists because if you fly the American flag at night, you're supposed to light it. So then you get into this whole, how is it lit, and different things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Which is basically an uplighting, which is.
Right, violation of the ordinance, yeah.
Right.
So I think at this point, it would say if it's American flag, you can uplight it, but if it's any other flag, we would require you to downlight it to meet the ordinance. I don't know if that's an issue or not an issue, or.
I guess if people object to this wording, they can bring it up with the PC.
Okay. I like it.
All right, 5.5.4, sign illuminations. Do we want to have the planning commission look at potentially putting hours associated with those?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so I don't have any recommendations, just that they should think about putting hours around that. Or not. I have nothing else on.
Oh, never mind.
Do you have more?
No, that was just a formatting thing.
Let me see if I have any more on this section.
Lee, any more on 5, or are you all set?
I'm good.
Good. All right.
I'm good.
All right. 6.
6.
So on 6.3B, I just highlighted that. I think, I didn't know if you wanted to put a note on that. I think we thought the PC should decide on that.
What was it? Sorry.
6.3B, the owner of the property shall live on site either in the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit. So, I mean, if somebody wants to rent out their property for an
Gotcha.
extended term, let's say they get transferred overseas for a year or something like that, then they'd be in violation of this. I think
Gotcha.
that's kind of a problem.
So are you all set, Laura?
Well, I have a few more. Should I continue
Yeah.
with mine? Okay. Let's see. I was wondering, under 6.4, is B and D consistent? I guess I just didn't quite understand that. I think future land division issues and then cannot be sold separately.
B and D.
Yeah.
I meant to go back to this one to make sure it aligned with what we more recently added for ag, and I didn't.
So can you ask your question again, Laura?
Okay, so I don't understand whether we're being consistent, and maybe I just don't understand this stuff, but 6.4B, we say to allow for future land division.
Mhm.
And then D, we say agriculture, employee housing center cannot be sold separately. But if you're building it so that you can divide the land and then saying,
Mhm. Maybe it would make sense to say unless it meets the land division requirements and will be used as a dwelling or something like that.
yeah, I'm not real clear on how the
Right.
land division stuff works. I'm
Yeah.
just saying this appears
I
to me to
agree.
be inconsistent.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think 6.11 automobile service stations, D, which way, I have a question, which way does finish side face? I think there may have been a couple of different places with that where we had specified it in one place and then we didn't specify it there. And we didn't specify it in 6.13C, outdoor storage. We required type board, wood fence, but we don't say finished side facing.
I can go through and look at the fencing when we're using it for screening or buffering, that the good side
Whether,
faces out.
yeah, whether we want to be consistent and specify which way the finished side faces or not. So 6.14, home-based business is not in the definitions. And then 2 places below in D and G, we refer to cottage industry. I think maybe that was meant to be home-based businesses.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I'd like to talk about home occupation, cottage industries, and home-based businesses with the planning commission, because I think that they're very closely all the same, but a little different, and we end up, from an enforcement perspective, it makes it very difficult because somebody says, oh, no, I fit into this box, or, so, I would like to have that discussion at the planning commission level to make sure that we're clear on it.
Okay, and then you can
Yeah.
decide whether you need a definition for home-based
Yeah.
businesses or whether it falls under
Yeah.
something else. Okay, what section is this? 6.25, solar energy farms. All the way down to C9. It says, sounds shall not be louder than the existing noise at the site, which kind of doesn't make sense. Maybe existing noise prior to installation or just,
Okay.
or specified decibels or something. It's just, doesn't make sense. Existing noise at the site is what it is.
Yes.
What number was that?
6 point.
B?
6.25,
On page 99.
item C9, sound limitations.
Okay.
And under C, application requirements, continuing down from 9 to 12, I'm wondering if this performance guarantee was just brought over from the excavation and fill section, and it says resource excavation, but you're not excavating resources, so that kind of nullifies this. Maybe just remove the word resource, so any kind of excavation to clear the land or,
Yeah, it should be solar. The conversation we had is that you wanted solar, wind, and mining to all have similar performance guarantee language, and so I did a copy and paste and didn't change the language.
okay, but I
Yeah.
think that it just needs to be customized to this
Yes, I agree.
paragraph. Okay. And the same falls under, well, it's on my page 104D, right above wind turbine. It's another, the performance guarantee is same thing.
Mhm.
And, okay, finally, on page 109, at the end of that section, just before 6.28, I was wondering if, do we need a performance guarantee section here as well?
Well, that's what I've got in my notes too. The 6.25C11, the life of the project and final reclamation, that language, that exact language should be in 6.26 under the towers and in 6.27, the wind turbines also.
So the language, what section do you like the language from?
6.25C11.
Okay, let me get there real quick. 6.11.
You mean 12? The performance guarantee?
Well, see, 11, I'm looking at, no, I'm the life of the project and final reclamation. That and that is the section that requires the escrow and the
Okay.
provisions for providing funding for removal and that. So that should be for all three of those sections.
So just add that to 6.26 and 6.27 is,
Correct.
okay.
Now, if I could just add on to what your comment is there. We had quite an discussion as to what percent inflation factor. We don't mention it in here. We were talking about what kind of index we were going to use. Now, the question is, because I was rethinking this, should that estimate be reevaluated annually? And then if there's a shortfall, that the company has to put up the funds. So that in essence, we might say that we're going to look at it on a 25-year life, but if you wait till the 25th year to do that calculation, you ought to be building up that reserve over the course of time as opposed to at the end.
Yeah, I agree, because that language doesn't, it just says include a provision for inflationary cost adjustments.
Yes.
So that could be, that'd have to be negotiated when that, I would have to think it would be annually.
Yeah, it's and I'm not sure how we would reword it, the idea, let the planning commission reword it. But the idea is that when you do your first cut, you'll say 25-year life and we'll assume 5% inflation. And therefore, this is how much you got to put in there. But it ought to be reevaluated, because if you go through a period of high inflation, you have no way of recovering that,
Yeah, I agree. I think
right?
I think it should be an annual
An annual review.
review, yeah.
I thought I had added something like that before. I don't see it though. Maybe I thought about it and I didn't.
No, we talked about it because I was listening to our last meeting. And the big discussion was, all right, what index do you use?
Yeah.
And we said, I think we decided on CPI, but the idea was we talked about how do you reevaluate it on an ongoing basis,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure we specifically said annually. So whatever you want to try to put into that section,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to have to fit in all three of those groups.
Yep. Maybe.
Wouldn't it simply be the insertion of the word annual, the provision for annual inflationary cost adjustment?
Yeah, that's what I did. Okay, I did it specific about mining. So in section 12.4, which is on page 148. It's the third paragraph in that section.
Page 148 under what?
148, it's 12.4, performance guarantee section.
Oh, okay.
The third paragraph, it says for mining operations. So there's a little bit of talk about shall be reviewed biannually with the applicant submitting 3 bids. This is the language I was thinking that I had added, but I did it specific for mining here, and we could tweak this to kind of apply more so what you were just talking about,
Yep.
Bob, but then be able to reference those other sections back to that too. Okay. Anything else for Article 6?
Not me.
Okay, Article 7.
I don't know if we talked about this before, and I don't know that it's possible to do so, but I don't know where it would go, but is there any way that we could insert language that would prohibit or at least restrict clear cutting of property?
We'd have to talk with the attorney about it. I think that, I don't know. I think it'd be difficult. I mean, a lot of the language talks about, you can't clear cut if you're intending to build until you have a permit. But if somebody wanted to clear cut their property to sell the lumber or something like that.
We had that problem. When the airport changed hands, they clear cut the trees between between a runway and a taxiway, and opened that whole area up, providing better visuals for the owner. And there was discussion in the township offices with Todd, do we go to court for a cease and desist until we figure it out? And Todd decided that you can stop it if in fact they've submitted plans to build a home, so that then you have something. But if they want to go in and clear cut for other purposes, that we probably would not succeed in that. So I think what Sarah is saying kind of backs up into where we were a couple years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else for Article 7?
I have nothing.
I have one item, page number 118, going down below D, development agreement. I think in our original, we require the township shall file with the master deed this information. Do we want that here or not?
So at the Register of Deeds?
Pardon?
With the Register of Deeds is what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I think that's what was being done before. I don't know if it was just omitted or it just isn't necessary, so I just thought I'd bring it up in case it was omitted.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Let me see if there's any notes that I had.
It was, in the original, or in our existing zoning ordinance, 18.7 is the page number. That would be.
What's it say?
It says, there's a requirement F, all requirements of the town, let's see, this is site plan review and approval, and at the end it says, all requirements of the township shall be included in the master deed if applicable.
Yeah, we can add something like that in there.
I know we've had some discussion about this before, but, in some other situations, but in 7.6, the opening paragraph, says the zoning administrator or planning commission shall review a application and make a determination. I'm just not sure that I would feel comfortable with the planning commission making a decision on site plans applications without the zoning administrator being involved. This says that the planning commission can do that, but I just think of course, it depends on the site plan. If it's a rather intricate, involved site plan, we would want the zoning administrator making sure that
Yeah.
everything's covered.
You know, the more I work through this section, there's a little bit, because we have some administrative approval, and that's where we get this planning commission or zoning administrator, and I think I might do that. I haven't thought about it for this one, but I was working in a different ordinance, and we moved that whole administrative review to a separate section, so it doesn't get caught in the middle of it, and that helps with some of that, or because when if you say the planning commission can change something, but the zoning administrator approved it, then that's why you get this and or in there. So maybe I'll take a look at this and see if there's a way to pull that out so that it makes sense and it is a little bit clearer. Anything else for Article 7? Okay, Article 8.
Special use permit, I thought there were 4 criteria. Is it only 3? For 8.4A? I thought we originally had 4 steps. When they did the Dollar General, there was a first set of group, which I think are the general standards. And I thought then there were 4 criteria. Is it only 3?
This has the criteria for approval would be 8.2, so A
Right.
through G. And then 8.4, I think that makes sense because it's just a procedure where you're saying you're reviewing it and then you have a public hearing and then you make a decision on it.
But didn't the planning commission walk through, they did the general standards?
They did site plan standards and then special use standards. So this 8.2 general standards in our current ordinance is only 4. So here it's expanded to more,
Right.
actually. Okay, Article 9.
Let me just go back
Mhm.
to 8.4. number 3, the planning commission shall establish a finding of fact. Are we establishing the same process as we do in the ZBA?
Mm-hmm.
So then, I'm trying to remember if we have more detail associated with the finding of fact, or if this is just whatever it is that they come up with.
I read this to mean they go back to the general standards and use those for their finding of facts.
That's what I'm gonna add that at the end of the sentence, based on the general standards.
Okay.
Just to be clear what the findings of fact are.
That's fine. I just thought it needed something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Back to 9, I'm sorry.
Yes, anything for PUDs or condominiums?
I had, on page 129, 9.2.8C, is that supposed to read county, not township? A certificate of
Yes.
occupancy shall not be issued by the, is the county the one that issues that?
Mm-hmm.
And then 9.2.9, in our original document, we had a D. Was that intentionally removed?
Let me take a look here.
And it's the part that was omitted, I believe, is the applicant shall be required as the PUD is built to provide the township with as-built drawings in both paper and digital format following the same provisions outlined in this section.
I had it noted that each of these got, like, the numbering is off. So just above there, what's labeled as 2.8, there's a D.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, where is that?
Like, I've got, like, each of these is off a number, so 9.2.8 is actually, what is it, 9? How did it go?
Yeah, that as-built is just above that section.
Yeah, the numbering is off.
So if you look at just above termination and expiration, that D that's just above that talks about the as-built. Did it get moved to the wrong section?
I just had the numbering is off. I think this is the one where it
Submission of
was,
final- No, I know there was something that looked off before too. I looked that up, but 9.
because there's two 9.2.
Oh, yeah, you're right,
9.1s.
9.2.8 here, and it's 9.2.9 in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I thought I figured that out. I'd have to go back and,
Yeah, I don't see in my original document, it was 9.2.10 was termination and expiration. And I don't have a D.
okay, so in the original document, 9.2.9 was
Mhm. Submission of final site plan.
final plans.
And
And
that-
so in this document, 9.2.8 is submission of final plan, site plans and development. And I see, okay, 9. Got it.
Okay, anything
Okay,
else?
never mind.
Anything else for Article 9? Article 10?
Okay, I show one missing two again here, but maybe I'm wrong. Under 10.3. Let's see, 10.3. Okay. I had, under 10.3C, we had, point 1 was changes to conforming uses, point 2 was changes to other non-conforming uses, point 3 was approval standards. And so we're missing the changes to other non-conforming uses. Was that intentionally omitted?
Yeah, there was a comment that I made, is this a use variance? Because you're changing from one non-conforming to another non-conforming, so are you approving a use that should not be allowed in that district? And did determine that it could be, not interpreted, but I think somebody could legally say that's a use variance, which we're not, the township's not allowed to grant a use variance. So even though we're not calling it a use variance, we're calling it something else. So I did intentionally remove that section.
Okay.
Anything else for Article 10?
Oh, we're still on,
Go
oh,
ahead.
10.4, or sorry, 10.3, at the end of that, would be no, 3 extensions. I think that should have been changed to zoning board of appeals, since that's what we call it in our township, under B and under C. ZBA, not BZA. And under 10.4, C, extensions, I feel that that might not be as clear as it can be. A non-conforming site, I'm not sure what's being extended, and by non-conforming site, are we referring to the landscaping on the site?
Could be.
Or we're not referring to lot dimensions or something like that?
No, it would be landscaping, mostly landscaping, maybe parking.
Okay. But, so does extensions mean like expanding?
Yeah, I think they could use a different title, not calling it extensions, maybe calling it, something else.
Expanded or contracted shall not be.
More, almost like changes to site or something. I'll think of the word that I'd like to call it, but I can see what you're saying about extensions. It has too many meanings for what that word is,
Yeah,
so,
it's just, the point just seems a little muddy to me.
yeah, I understand.
Okay. Let me see if I had any more. on 10. That's all I had for 10.
So if we go to just the opening sentence under 10.4. So how would we look at the airport runways? If,
What's a non-conforming use?
well, it's, the runways are non-conforming in the commercial.
Right,
So if you want to expand it, you're kind of saying here that there are extensions. And I understand where there is a conforming use. So is there any chance that you could extend that with the land and take it as a total lot? So there's conforming zoning next to the non-conforming? And by extension, can you try to get something moved through that?
I think what we need to do for non-conforming sites is say they can be as long as the following provisions, and say that something about non-conforming uses, like the site cannot contain a non-conforming use or something to that extent, because you don't want to allow non-conforming uses to expand or to do things, unless they're in conformance with the ordinance.
Right. You don't want the non-conforming to become more non-conforming.
Right. So I'm going to add a F on there and talk about non-conforming uses, and maybe that this section, can't be used to something related to non-conforming uses, or,
All right,
I understand what you're saying.
because we know it's coming.
Yeah, yep, so that's a good point. Okay, Article 11, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Would you like me to start again?
Yeah, this is yours.
Okay, 11.2 membership, first paragraph, I think the word may doesn't belong there. Zoning Board of Appeals shall consist of 5 members and 2 alternates may appoint by, and 2
Should say
alternates appointed by the township.
Maybe,
Or it should be maybe.
yeah.
Well,
So because the law does not require that 2 alternates are appointed, a lot of times we say may instead of shall, because if for some reason you don't have 2 alternates appointed, then you're in violation of your own ordinance.
Right.
I think,
So maybe sounds like the right,
Yeah,
well, if we're saying we want 2 alternates, we're fine, because we're still within.
right.
So I would change the may to are, because basically you're saying, hey, we want 2 alternates, and they are appointed by the township board.
well, then if you just take may out, you're fine. Zoning Board of Appeals shall consist of 5 members and 2 alternates appointed by the township
Yep,
board.
That's fine. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
So 11.4, we're missing A through H, points A through H under that?
Let's see.
Unless you wanted that taken out and just say refer to the ZBA's adopted rules and procedures.
Yeah, I think we did that intentionally because your bylaws are so detailed, and then we end up with conflicting in the ordinance with the rules and procedures.
Okay, so ZBA shall adopt rules of procedures as may be deemed necessary to properly conduct business and organize meetings.
Wasn't that what you do in the first meeting?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that is, all the things that we had in here aren't necessarily, and I think I cross-checked, they aren't all in our rules and procedures, but we can go back and review the rules and procedures based on the information that was here and update those if we think necessary.
Yeah, I tried to pull out anything from the ordinance that should be in the rules and procedures. If it's covered in one place, shouldn't be covered in both, and try to keep this closer to what the law would require. Except for, like the application, that's similar to what we have in our current ordinance right now. Because then I can point to it when somebody comes in and wants to apply. It's in the ordinance, this is the law.
Okay. So I will take this back and compare it to the rules and procedures, and if I think we need to do something, we can just
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Um, Okay. So 11.9 variances. Um, I I just used this as a reference to kind of double check that. And I think we've covered pretty much everything that this suggests is our criteria for variances. Although I would like to review item B. The variance request is the minimum variance needed to provide substantial relief to the applicant and/or be consistent with justice to other property owners. And they use the word fair rather than justice in here, which I think is maybe a little easier to understand, but I would rewrite it thus. The variance requested is the minimum variance needed to provide substantial relief to the applicant and be fair to other property owners, and and fair to other property owners and be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. And then I think we have it all covered.
Perfect.
So would you like me to?
I got it.
Reread that?
I
again?
got it.
Okay. I didn't say it very clearly. And it was the, and we omitted is 11.10 from the original document exceptions, and we dropped to, and hearings and decisions became 11.10. Did we intentionally drop exceptions? And that is 11.10. Exceptions was
Yes,
to hear and decide requests.
because exceptions, I don't believe our ordinance has those exceptions. So a lot of times ordinances will say, instead of calling them variances, it'll allow the ZBA to approve like minor deviations and for exceptions. So, in rereading this portion of it, I don't think that it's relevant to this ordinance.
Okay. That, and, okay, 11.13C, the ZBA shall consider appeals of any decision by the planning commission, or the ZBA shall not consider appeals. I think not is supposed to be in there.
We ended up changing it so that the ZBA can hear appeals of basically any decision the planning commission makes can be appealed to the zoning board of appeals before it's sent to the courts.
Okay. Even special land use permits and plan unit developments? Okay, I didn't think that was allowed.
Yeah, it's not in our current ordinance, but we did talk about allowing that as a kind of an extra step. It's
I must have missed that meeting. Oh, wait, I can't attend it all.
I think we went back and forth a couple of different times. I know that Bob and I went back and forth a couple of different times talking about it. And then I think when we were talking with Steve Langworthy about it too. And so in the end, came up with to allow the appeals of the ZBA decisions, which is kind of nice. I know that it's one extra step if somebody, for a developer or an applicant, but it allows the township, from a township perspective, for the ZBA to review the decision, the procedure, find if there were any errors, and then kind of order it back for the PC to make that. And it's a relatively inexpensive way for the township to find that out versus having the PC decision appealed to the court. Then we have to get our attorney, and it costs a lot of money before you get to a decision for a judge to say, you didn't base this on your standards for approval. Hopefully your ZBA would be able to find that.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Yes. You have more?
That's it. I'm done.
Well, I want to stay in that same one.
okay.
ZBA shall consider appeals of any decision by the planning commission.
Mhm.
So the rezoning decision on M88 could have been appealed to the ZBA.
Maybe I understand what you're saying. Well,
No,
Or-
the applicant would have to do the appeal.
so if I took out all shall well, because it's kind of, when you read the whole sentence though, the ZBA shall consider appeals of decisions by the planning commission or township board regarding requests, for amendments. I see what you're saying right there.
Not only that, but the township board, I'm not sure that the ZBA is in a position to overrule the township board. Let's say it approves what the planning commission did. I just don't know why the township board is mentioned with the ZBA. I don't know of anything that the township board would decide that can go to the ZBA for a review and an overturning of it or not.
Yeah. I think that we could take out the township board there. I think the planned unit development, the board ends up approving that, don't they? I'm gonna go back and look. I know we went back and forth on that one too.
Well, I thought a lot of that stuff, once the planning commission did it, right, it has to be approved by the township board. I thought the ZBA only looked at stuff that the zoning administrator made a decision on. And nothing coming out of the planning commission. Because once the planning commission makes a decision, it then goes to the county. And from the county to the board. So if you're going to appeal the planning commission decision, I thought the only path was the referendum.
Yeah, for an amendment. An amendment should not be in this list of items that can be appealed to the ZBA because that's not consistent with state law. Or I put in a caveat in there unless
Yeah, but it's-
something about state law. But I'll just take that out. I'll clear that out. I'll clean that language up.
All right. Under 11.6, appeals of administrative decisions. Does the ordinance enforcement officer's actions, do they fall into anything with the ZBA, or is that strictly the planning commission? Because we don't address it. So if the ordinance enforcement officer enforces something driven by, is that individual's actions reviewable by anyone?
Well, ideally, the ordinance enforcement officer would be acting through the zoning administrator and not
Yeah.
making any decisions. So, the ordinance enforcement officer isn't sending out letters or even determining if there's a violation. They're out to inspect a violation, return the information back to the zoning administrator. Then the zoning administrator makes the determination if that violation has occurred. And then that would be a zoning administrator appeal.
Okay.
So we could, if you wanted to give the ordinance enforcement officer more power,
No, I'm not looking to do that.
okay.
I want to make sure that because that individual may or may not be versed well enough in the ordinances and the impact of those. It's better that they are the reaction to a request from the ZA.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The ZA requests the information, they obtain it, bring it back to the
All right.
zoning administrator, yeah.
All right. Do you want under alternates, do we want to talk about recusals of any in here? Because I don't think, see, it talks about an absence, but it should also include, I would think, recusals. At least
Yeah,
Right,
so
top.
absence slash or and, because the last sentence talks about involving a conflict of interest,
Yeah.
so.
What section are you looking at?
it is 11.3.
141.
The last sentence, I may have missed that.
Yeah, but I think that it,
Because maybe what I was thinking of is the recusals as we enforce in the planning commission that they have to leave the room.
mhm.
And do we want that same standard? That's more what I was.
That's actually in our rules of procedure,
Okay,
that if somebody recuses themselves, they leave the
Alright.
room.
But I think that, I mean, I guess in a broad sense, an absence is either just an absence or not here or a conflict of
Conflict.
interest.
all right.
So can I just ask Sarah a quick question to clarify on a quorum? I think I read that alternates do not count to fill a quorum. They can vote, but if you don't have three of the members present, you don't have a quorum. Is that correct? It's not in here. This
Oh.
is something I picked up someplace else and I can't remember
Yeah,
where.
no, they should, if they are acting on behalf of a regular member, they should count towards the quorum and have all of the full voting rights and act just like a regular member.
Okay.
Well, your question would be, can you open a meeting without a quorum of regular members?
Okay, well, maybe
whereby-
that's the issue.
Oh, I see
confused.
what you're
I'm
saying.
confusing.
So say that there's only two regular members and then you have your two alternates, you
Right.
still have kind of a quorum, but technically not a quorum of your
Right.
regular members. I do not believe that's how that should be interpreted or enforced because the alternates essentially are regular members, or are functioning as regular members when they're seated. But we could double check that, only because
I just wanted to know, just so I made sure I understood for my own
yeah,
purposes.
I've not heard that before. But I can take a look in the state law and I'll ask someone actually about that.
I'm thinking that when a member calls the chairperson, says, I will not attend. Yeah, just call and verify it, but I think at that point that.
You could get
the
you could
chairperson-
get a proxy vote to open the meeting or something like that,
Well, let's see
right?
what the state says.
Yeah, I'll take a
That's
look
not-
at it a
yeah.
little bit. I
All right.
understand what you're talking about though. Okay.
That's it.
Article 12?
The only thing I had was when you specify the number of days, do you want to be specific on whether they're calendar days or, I mean,
For public hearings?
yeah, does that matter?
Um, This mimics the state law language.
or- Okay.
We could say calendar days if you kind of want to clarify that.
I think if it mimics the state law language, then it has to be interpreted the same way the state law is. So I don't think there's a question. Just
Okay.
wanted to make sure we didn't
Yeah.
have a hole.
Yep.
So does this apply to the township board? Because I know for public hearings, I've got certain criteria. So I would hold a public hearing. I probably wouldn't hold a public hearing. Well, I could if some came from the planning commission
Mhm.
and we were uncomfortable or we wanted to have a public hearing. Would it fall under this then?
Yeah. So, and that would, what happens is that the state law tells you, if the township board is required to hold a public hearing and meet these standards. Typically, they're the same, because you can have application where the public could petition the township board to hold a public hearing, even though you're not required to by our
Right.
ordinance. And that does have to meet this 15-day, those requirements, but the state law pushes us back into that,
But that's really separate
right?
from what
Yeah.
we're doing here for zoning.
Yep.
All right. I have nothing else on 12.
Okay. 13?
I had on 13.1.1, you need to put township board there in the fourth sentence.
Oh,
Just says township.
Or property owners of the, wait, where?
Fourth line.
Oh, fourth line, okay.
That as a township board, we could go to the planning commission and ask them to initiate a rezoning
Mhm.
request. I'm not sure how that would work, but
I got a question on 13, what is that? 13.12. It said an amendment should be initiated by submission. Shouldn't we indicate who that's supposed to be submitted to?
Yeah, because it just says to the township at the end of submitted of a complete and accurate application to the township zoning administrator.
Well, if it's, I think we ought to indicate what position that
Yeah.
gets, yeah.
I will add zoning administrator there. Okay, anything else in Article 13?
So, under 13.12A4, a written description of how the requested amendment meets the criteria stated in this section. So the criteria stated in this section would be 13.1.3D?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else here.
all right, on, under D, 3.13D, page 154 at the top, where it says other factors deemed appropriate by the planning commission and/or township board.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that there's a step missing, which is the county review. Because the township board, would the planning commission come directly to the township board first?
I think you moved that, didn't you move that to E?
Well, the
Is it-
county is E, but the township board's not required to use these standards in making their decisions. Only the planning commission is, but I would recommend that the township board at least take a look at them, in making the decision. And so, it kind of goes both. You have planning commission, and then the next section is county, and then the township board. But the township board could refer back up to planning commission section. So that's where that township board comes
Well,
from.
Yeah, but how are you gonna get it to me? Because what you're saying is the planning commission will make a decision and then they'll come straight to the township board for their input based on this.
No, because this is just the standards, so,
Then I would say that language should come down into F, which is under the township board action. And recommend that the board follow the items identified in D. So I think in terms of M88, which was a rezoning decision. And it came now, the board did not pursue any of those, nor were we really thinking that we should. I'm thinking that if we had done that and found the same criteria acceptable as the planning commission in going through those, then that would have been a double check as opposed to our having to make the decision based on what we saw and what we heard at the planning commission meeting or what was presented.
so what I can do is I can add up under D, that beginning paragraph, that last, kind of in the last sentence, in considering this amendment for the official zoning map or text amendment, the planning commission shall consider the following factors and make its finding recommendations. What I would do is say the planning commission shall and the township board may consider, because the township board is not required under law to have to consider factors that the planning commission is. So I don't want to say the township board shall, because then you have to.
Yep.
But if I add in there, that I think helps direct you back to the township
Yep.
board. Okay.
That's fine. That's all I had.
Okay. Okay, anything in 14 for definitions?
Well, I started going through these and comparing them to our old definitions, and I realized that the planning commission was gonna have a hefty job going through these, because there's 85 definitions in our old, or the current ordinance that aren't included in the new one. And then I started going through, and there's some reclassifications of things that but I think that there's some, and I'll use as an example, they have a definition for automobile. And yet, everybody knows what an automobile is, but there are some things that aren't included, like, maybe I found the answer, I got something crossed. Is there a definition for watercraft? We don't have a definition for watercraft.
No, but we'll add that in.
And personal
Yeah,
watercraft.
both of those.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go through and read through the definitions again to make sure that it all jives together. Because every time you read it, you're like, do we have a definition? Nope. And you go and add the definition in, or,
So how would you, I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
stuff that, like, kids run around those electric boards now and stuff.
yeah.
That's self-motorized, certainly not a car. But you can't say electric because we got electric cars, so it's just,
Yeah, and maybe we take it out and just rely on, if there's no definition, you rely on a standard definition in a dictionary.
that
Is-
might not be bad.
So I can take a look and see, maybe that makes sense for automobile to just,
Well, I just use that as an example.
Right.
but-
No, but I agree. I mean, I think that this could be considered a little broad
Yeah.
for automobile.
And in the M's and microbrewery,
Mm-hmm.
why do we not then have a definition of a micro distillery?
I'll double check. Maybe we called it something different. Yep.
I'm sure everything, most of that, of the, an applicable definition will probably be very similar,
Mm-hmm.
except there is a totally different production process.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with, oh, here, you got, I had a note here. You do have a small distillery and a small winery. So maybe they should, maybe there should be a small brewery and a small, something where all of them are,
Yeah. I'll
Com-
double check.
yeah, just
And-
consistent.
I don't remember. I'll double check the state law too, because that may be because the state law might say the microbrewery, but they might not, or yeah, but they don't call it a micro distillery.
Okay.
So I'll look at the state law too. That may be why that's different.
Okay,
All right, do you have any more, Lee?
that's all I have.
All right, under B, 14.3, in basement, I think you've got the fourth sentence is a duplicate. Basements shall not be counted as a story. You got it right above there. Shall not be considered a story. And then, as I pointed out, we don't have a seawall defined.
Mm-hmm.
And then the structure, you have 9 inches. I was trying to figure out what the 9 inches represents, because if we think about the structure on Torch that we're looking at, that sits flat. So,
I mean, we could take that off.
I'm just thinking that by indicating that structure is above the ground, right? By 9 inches or something, or over 9 inches, then it's a structure. And I would bet that concrete's only about 5 to 6 inches. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure if we want to have that
Yeah.
minute a measurement.
Yep, we can take that out and just say anything having a location on the ground.
That's all I had, I think.
Anything else?
How do you want to handle within the structure the findings of the ZBA on that one case, where they defined a structure having rebar and concrete?
We probably should add that into the definition.
Okay.
Do you remember when that case was? A general year?
Yeah, it's got to be. I was on, so it might have been 2019, early 2020.
2000, okay. We'll just go
because-
back to those minutes then.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's somewhere in there. It's, because it was appealed to circuit court and then appellate court, so.
Okay. Yep, we can add that in there. Anything else in 14?
Laura? Laura squared,
Okay.
I'd say that's,
Perfect. Well, I'm going to be reading back through this and doing typos and bullet, all of that. moving forward, is the subcommittee then ready to send this on to the planning commission? Or is this something that you feel you need to take another look at?
Well, we had three options in my mind.
Okay,
One was move the document with the changes that we've made to the planning commission. My concern was if we didn't get all the way through it, that we would move a portion that we reviewed and then have a second meeting. Or if we really blew it up, then we'd have to set up a new meeting. So it seems to me that I would like to make the motion to move the document with changes to the planning commission as soon as the final changes are complete.
Well, my question is, then Sarah will just make the changes we discussed now and then send it to the planning commission.
Yeah, because again, at this point, we're going to be fine tuning it.
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion on the motion?
Will we have like or will we provide either a little asterisks or something, or a secondary document, pointing out all those places where, special attention here,
Yeah.
discussion time. Okay.
I might either maybe I'll highlight and then just provide a cover memo that says anything that's highlighted, that the subcommittee called out as need to be discussed by the planning commission. Not to limit that that's all they can talk about, but
Don't miss
the
it.
subcommittee very specifically said, hey, planning commission, take a look at this.
This is yours.
Yeah, yep,
All right. Any
I
other
made note of
comments?
all those things too, so
okay,
let me know if you want my notes.
okay. Come on.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, the motion has been moved and seconded to move the document with changes to the planning commission as soon as the minor changes are completed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to public comment. There is no public. We won't have any comments. Comments from the committee members. Laura, we'll start with you.
Yeah, good job, Sarah. Thanks. Much better.
And Laura Square.
I think the planning commission has a good start, and I think you did a good job leading us through this.
So that was a big factor in that. Mary, short timer.
I don't know that I contributed much, but I learned a lot.
Well,
So,
that's just as important. There may be a role for you somewhere down the road.
yeah.
Lee,
Well, I just reflect on my time. So the 5 years I spent as chair of the planning commission, and I've said this before, that the challenge they have going through this with public hearings is significant. And I think that the work that we've done to prepare them for it has been very important. And I certainly appreciate I had the benefit, I mentioned this before, when I was a chair of the planning commission, I had two people on that planning commission that were incredible wordsmiths and detail oriented. And if they were on this committee, we would be here for months. But they did a good job, and I think that we played that role to a certain point for the planning commission now. And I'm anticipating some interesting planning commission meetings, and I certainly will express my views about some of the stuff we've done. And but anyway, and Sarah, I'm impressed with the work you've done. I know it's a lot of work, and I was anticipating before we started, I might have to take some happy pills sometime in here, but I didn't have to. So anyway, and I want to thank everybody for being patient with my hearing.
hey,
It worked out okay once Mike figured it out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's worth it. Well, my comments, folks, is thanks for your time, a lot of it, and for hanging in there with me. And Sarah, for all your work.
Thank you.
And again, thanks again. And with that, I'll make the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, steering committee.